But he has something to say about this.
You bet he does.
And that is different.
Completely different. Completely different. See, part of what Adidam has brought here in his realization and revelation is the transcending of what would previously appear and be understood as divine enlightenment.
Mm.
And it is, from Adidam's point of view, divine enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. You mean the great six stagers?
Fifth stage,
Uh-huh.
fourth stage.
Those are divine enlightenments.
Those are divine enlightened beings.
Mm-hmm.
But from Adidam's point of view,
So to speak.
they're limited, they're supported, they're conditional, they're...
In what conditions and what supports each one? I understand this.
Well, let's say from a fourth page, you need a body.
You need a body and you need a beloved. So that's fourth stage. And fifth stage of the support is...
You need the experience.
You need the nervous system mechanisms. And
you're in the brain form. You've got the light. You're blissed in the light. Your heart is exploded in being in the divine consciousness of light, and you can sit in this for ever and ever and ever. But unfortunately, you're embodied and whoop, okay.
Okay, so you're back and you gotta go to work.
Or whether you can be buried underground for 6 days in the Kumbh Mela. I mean, you could be in these samadhis for a long period of time. You can go without food. You can go without breath. You can go without anything for a certain period of time.
Okay, so the temporal limitation there in the fifth stage. Now we get to the sixth stage, which is what supports the sixth stage? Is it, as he says, the discrimination supporting the sixth stage? You have to go not this,
you're actually
not this,
beyond
not this.
mind. You're beyond discriminative mind. You're beyond...
At its realization.
You're just... There's... The causal has no form, has no distinction. It is in the most subtle of subtle form. There's not even a sense of... I mean, people, you could stay in this for eons and eons and eons of time because there doesn't see... You're dissolved. In the most subtle of subtle conditions. So it's even, you're lost in, if you will, in bliss. You're gone.
Sounds like a God realization to me. So
it is.
So now, he has something more to say then.
Yes, because in that kind of inverted, if you will, the most subtle of subtle of subtle, Adidam says, you've removed yourself from conditions. There is a withdrawal.
The cave.
Into the cave.
Of sublimity.
Adidam says that the conditions in the seventh stage of life are that. So there's no need for a movement.
So is it, yes.
So the conditions are also divine in themselves. So there's no need to
withdraw from the world.
To be the alpha or the omega. To engage and absorb life and eat it up and spit it out and turn it around and twist it to your mind form.
Then is this the 10th bull where he's back in the world after having...
That's the tradition, that's the premonitory kind of thing, is the old dog.
And what about then, would you say, the great saying...
Quite an old dog,
the great saying, samsara and nirvana are the same, is that...
Exactly. Those are the intuitions of what all the great realizes already. This has always been here.
It's only this.
It's only this. This is only this.
So so what does Adi Da add to that conversation?
Well, then you'd have to go to each realizer to find out what that was for that experience, if you will, or what was that realization when you get down. The speech has always been the same. Read the Upanishad. That's always
right. I mean, I can think of the 10 bulls, and that seventh, the eighth and ninth frame where you go to the source, and then you're back in the world. Now, I can imagine that being even a fifth stage interpretation. You could go to the light, you go there, and you come back into the world. That doesn't necessarily imply seventh stage, although the seventh stage, like you say, the conditional and unconditional worlds then become the same, become not different.
Right. Because we're always speaking, whatever the awakening brings, it's always an intuition or a level of the great realization of what Adi Da speaks to. Except there is the subtle parts of the error to it.
And the subtle part of the error is always hinged on it, it always sits on attention.
Absolutely on attention.
And attention is literally a tension. And that tension creates self and all of its objects.
Objects, yes.
So anytime you have an object, you have a subject.
Well, a lot of people get lost in the light, so to speak.
And the objects.
And the objects, and are completely blissed in the objects.
So that those objects go from ice cream through sexuality, which would be the highest form of pleasure in the body-mind, to the beloved saint, the beloved service, the love itself, and that object would then be the raptures of that you can conform your life towards, and then the object would be even resting in the heart. But what's not inspected would then be the subject. And the subject is a tension, and all the objects, and then the objects become more and more subtle as the tension becomes less and less intense. But the tension remains, and even when you let go for a moment, the seed which made that remains.
The seed is always there. It's inherent in it.
It's inherent in.
It's inherent. It's the nature of it. It's not like there's a separation.
And so, so you have the tension that makes self and objects. And that's why he would say the tension is the tent pole that forms all the mind. Because it all hangs on that tension. It makes time, past tense, future tense. I'm going to get it then, I'm going to understand that, I'm going to have enlightened then. It's the uninspected.
As this
crazy guy.
one of these crazy guys talks about, he says, make the smallest distinction and the infinity is split to its 10,000 directions or whatever. As soon as you make the smallest distinction, immediately
there's everything
the world
else.
of 10,000, as they say.
So the Greek word for 10,000 is myriad.
Myriad, okay, there you go.
Myriad of forms.
Yeah.
And so the tension, is like he says, I call you to understand attention.
That's the key to spirituality, and that's really, attention is separation.
The attention is separation. That 10,000's generative.
Identification, differentiate. Once the attention is there,
then you have identification, differentiation,
it's
desire.
spontaneous.
So then Buddhism, which is founded on the understanding of desire, that's its way into this.
Oh yeah.
That's it. You have identification, differentiation, desire, and Buddha says desire, which is basic, literally gross, basic. That's going to be observing the frameworks of desire, would then be an avenue to this inspection.
Absolutely. But one thing about Adi Da, Adi Da includes all of this, and that was at the time. We're speaking about a kind of cosmic time here. So Adi Da is completing all of these traditional methods. He's completing it. He's not discarding them. He's not throwing Christianity and Jesus out the door. He's not throwing Buddha out the door. He's not throwing Muhammad out the door. He's not taking Confucius and throwing him out there and saying
Ramana and
all these guys are bullshit.
Yeah, kindergartners.
No, he's embracing them. He says they are his family. They are his. They all belong to him. Now this him is not just this body. See, this is where everybody gets fucking puts him in the middle.
Because we are tense and he is object.
Well, that's the whole thing. As long as you're looking at Adi Da, guess who's looking?
Well, then let's finish with this eat attention in the heart. Therefore, eat attention in the heart.
Eat attention in the heart. Or dissolve attention in the heart. Or be sublimed because you're attracted. There is this bliss that is prior to
the mechanics of attention.
The mechanics of this. No matter whether you're in the 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, whatever, there is always this prior enjoyment. And
substance.
You always know what it is. It's always there. Huh? And so, eat, dissolve, fall, be, all these adjectives and verbs and pointers and
so the 7th stage way is the presumption of the prior condition in the context of all the other stages. So you can eat attention in the heart as a 7th stage way. That sounds like something I can do.
And that's the era of mind. And if you haven't developed your own way, then you're going to take your 3rd stage mind, put it into the 7th stage teaching, and think this 3rd stage mind has this understanding, and only in an abstract way.
So I have an abstract attention presuming the divinity of consciousness itself.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe I can get people to pay me. No, of course not. But so, eat attention in the heart is a 7th stage admonition. And
I always like to say at the heart.
And so, but his and one more thing like this, he says, I will receive, when you come to that spot, the spot we talked about in the cave or in the wherever it was earlier, he says, then I will receive, I always stand at the threshold forever.
Forever.
And I will receive the prayers that are their whole bodies.
Because he's always calling. He's always calling you. He says the biggest problem with
he, so to speak.
Yeah, he. We're not talking about it, you know.
And not objectified.
Yeah, for all those 3rd stage minds that want to kind of put it all on others.
So when we say he, we're staying savvy relative to the tension object errors.
All the great ones said he. There's only one. There's only this. There's only this. There's only this.
Non-objectified he.
Non-objective. The perfectly subjective he.
Perfectly subjective.
But he's always calling you. He says the biggest problem with the spiritual aspirants is that they either get complacent or they don't accept the demand. He's always calling.
Or both.
Or both. Or you run that way. But there's always the call. There's always, once you awaken to your own one nature, but also the era that you've been always enacting.
He told me I'm always trying to take heaven by storm.
Because you've got a glimpse.
I got a glimpse of it given. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to get it.
Okay, now, you know, yeah. And that's a good thing, but it's also the era, is
right.
You know.
Understand this error.
Exactly.
Which is the error of attention.
You've been given the gift. And so, you know, I'll just share it with everybody, you know, and I'll just give it to everybody. And don't you see?
Or there's a lot of other things I could do with it.
And that's that's the whole paradox of it. But the people who have these understandings, and they're all true and good and right and right and right, but there's always got to be self-understanding at the root of it all.
And by root you mean causal, absolute.
Well, the subtler. There's always this sense of like, this not, and attention is not. It's a not. It's a
Tension, aptly named.
It's attention.
So attention and self-contraction are the same.
Absolutely.
And attention slowly, attention gets more and more subtle until there is the intuition of that which is prior to it.
Right, but when
but tension itself
it
is
doesn't
a
get
form
any
of
lighter. It doesn't get any lighter. It just gets more magnified. Because when he talks about absolute intensity, because you now, once you get that awakening, this is a moment to moment to moment. There's no vacation here. There's no bailout. There's no
final solution.
No, you're in the kiln.
Right.
You're in the fire. You're in. You see it. So as it gets subtler and subtler and subtler, or as he says, the closer you get to the light, well, guess what? The light is a fire. So you got to go through the fire.
Which burns up everything.
Which purifies. This is a purification process. So that's the sadhana. You can't do this without sadhana. That's sadhana. Sadhana is being attracted, but also being responsible for this, but also being drawn to that which is greater than this, which is always...
Which burns it up.
Which burns it up, purifies it. So, sadhana is
purification.
Purification.
Is fire.
And so some people will go to the fourth level of it all and